Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Conscious Life Expo. You're in Los Angeles, California. How you doing? Fantastic. What a wonderful day we've been having. The Conscious Life Expo is the preeminent expo featuring holistic health, spirituality, the esoteric, personal growth, and more importantly, metaphysics and UFOs. Something that applies directly to you each and every day. Today we have a very, very interesting presentation that I think is going to take you to a new place of consciousness and understanding about how UFOs and extraterrestrials relate to you. You are part of them. We are not alone. It is true. I'm talking about Dr. Steven Greer. Give me a big hand. Dr. Greer is the founder of CSETI. He is the founder of the Disclosure Project. His best books here, Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, Disclosure, and Extraterrestrial Contact are bestsellers. Nothing more be said. Brace for impact. This is Steven Greer.
My own radar start picking up items going 3,000-4,000 miles an hour in this area.
But I do remember speeds in excess of 4,000 to 5,000 miles an hour.
And he said it was traveling 10,000 miles plus.
And they were going somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 to 14,000 miles an hour.
They covered the distance from Columbus to Detroit in something like equivalent of about 20,000 miles an hour.
And I heard a couple women there in the Air Force talking about aircraft flying in and out of the atmosphere at Mach 10 plus.
It's not an infrequent occurrence there. They have them quite often.
There were probably 1,500 reported cases at that time.
I have over 3,000 cases now.
They estimated 100 yards from the left wing was this 100-foot disc.
And the strength of the signal was as strong as the surface contact on the water of an aircraft carrier. This contact was huge.
The size of these objects around 100 meters or greater.
So it would go from 1 o'clock, 7 or 8 miles to 6, 7 o'clock, 7 or 8 miles inside of 4 or 5 seconds. You have to be moving pretty quickly. They could rise, just go straight up. They could do that, just seemed like instantaneous. Once they started moving, they went straight up, for a while, and then they went zap. Then it just sort of disappeared, it dematerialized, and left the atmosphere, just was gone. It just took off into space. It just left at high speed.
He said, "You are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this never happened."
And you never saw this, and I don't exist, and this situation never happened.
I didn't want to look at it any longer than that because I felt that my life was in jeopardy.
So I was beaten, literally hit in the ribs and pushed, and I was resisting. And I know Sergeant Bustinza was doing the same thing.
Measures have been taken by agencies to terminate people who appear to be inconvenient or troublesome through knowing too much.
A shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
I am prepared to state that I have been at locations where craft of unknown origin that did not originate on the face of this planet was there. I am prepared to state that while I was there, we saw living, dead bodies, entities that were not born on this planet.
My name is Dr. Steven Greer. I am the director of the Disclosure Project.
Thank you.
It's a project of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Project.
I want to. I want to show just a couple minutes of the Disclosure Project DVD that we have. of some of the military guys and their experiences with this subject. We have now over 500 of these folks, top secret clearances, most of them, and who have come forward to tell the world the truth about this, at least to the extent that these objects exist. They're of extraterrestrial origin, some of them. Some of them are made by Lockheed and Northrop and covert programs. But the whole matter is of the utmost importance, not just to the world of, we have a reverberation in here, but is it me? Not just to the fact that they're real and they're technological, but to what it means. And this is what we're going to spend the next couple hours doing, is what's the meaning behind all of this? Why are they here? What are we to do about it? But first I want to ask you guys, how many people were in the lecture that I gave this afternoon? Oh, well, how many weren't? Maybe that's easier. Well, we're not going to go back over all that. It was a lot, actually. Have most people here seen the books or read the books and whatnot? So I don't want to go back through how many people are completely new to what we're doing? That gives me an idea. Very few. Okay, good. So you guys will just kind of like go to a non-local level of consciousness and catch up on all that off the linear space-time continuum, and then that'll be fine. But you know, this has been quite a journey for me, and really this most recent book that I wrote, which took a really deep breath to see if I wanted to do, it's called Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which is really what I want to go into. I want to go into the hidden truth and the forbidden knowledge behind this subject. And it's not what you're going to hear in other places. And it, in a sense, is a memoir, but it's a way of telling a message. And it's a message that's actually one of enormous hope. Because we live in a time where, on the one hand, there's the old world dying. And you can get very wrapped up in that. But it's kind of taking its last gasps. But what we're really about here is the creation of a new world. And it is an entirely new time. And our civilization is going through a period where we are going to, like it's a metamorphosis, butterfly emerging. And we are going to see a civilization on this planet that will no more resemble the current world than we resemble the era of cavemen. And we're not talking thousands of years. We're talking dozens to a few hundred years, and maybe sooner than that. But the basis of it all is in the consciousness of the people and the consciousness of each of us as we find our way to manifest that good future. And we're going to manifest that good future in our meditation and in our actions. When I was a young child, and my uncle was building the lunar module that put the first man on the moon, I had an experience where I saw one of these objects that was moving like these folks talk about, hovering and then vanished. And didn't just move off, it dematerialized and was gone. And you have to say, well, where did it go? People say, well, into another dimension, but that doesn't really explain anything. We'll get into this, and we're some depth today, and more depth tomorrow. Because our civilization is moving towards an understanding that will reach parity, equality with these cosmic civilizations. And at the end of this 500,000 year cycle that we've entered, this civilization on Earth will be a God-conscious, enlightened, high-tech, interstellar civilization, where even the manifestations of our technology are all empowered with pure consciousness. And that's what you encounter when you come on these expeditions with out to the desert. This story, for many people, gets to be a bit overwhelming. And so I'm going to try to just take it in pieces so that we can kind of digest it and not get cosmic indigestion. But the starting point of it is the understanding of the nature of mind. And the nature of mind is that it is a non-local, omnipresent field of awakeness. Every single person's conscious being is infinite. And the is the objective of meditation techniques and deep prayer and people who had near-death experiences, as I did when I was 17. And what happens, and when you come to realize that you also come to realize that the consciousness whereby you're awake is infinite and omnipresent. And in fact, everything is made of the stuff of awareness resonating as that thing. Doesn't matter what it is. This, that, the stars, the body. It's all consciousness resonating as that thing. Remember this as we go through this discussion. Because what I really want to introduce to you is a new cosmological understanding, a cosmology that integrates mind and consciousness with technologies and interstellar travel and interstellar communication and contact with extraterrestrial life forms. That's where we're going in the next 2 hours. Y'all ready for this? Long, yeah, let's go. Okay, so, yeah, I'm a Southerner. My joke, as I said, when I go to these meetings at the Pentagon to brief admirals and generals and CIA directors and all this stuff and ministers of defense, is that I just say, I'm a country doctor from Virginia. I used to be from North Carolina, but now I live in Virginia. But here's what I found out about that project that they're lying to you about. And they go, oh, good. And it's one of these things where in this memoir, I go through this journey that started when I was 8 or 9, where I had my first contact with these beings from other civilizations, and goes up to the very recent, the last year or two. And it's quite a journey. It's quite a journey. Share it as a way of explaining the journey that all of us are going through, because we're really all one person. We're one being shining through many bodies and individualities. And another thing I'd like to point out is that everyone in this room is awake, I hope. You're not all stomped on the stage and wake you up. But if you're awake, that awake mind is shining through your individuality. And think of your individuality in its purest form, on the color level of its creation, as this perfect snowflake, unique. No two are alike. Or a window, a crystalline window that is itself conscious. And the consciousness whereby you can be aware of awareness is the same consciousness shining from the eyes of each person here. And so you realize that there's one universe teeming with life, and there's really one being, one person and one people. And the motto for CSETI, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, is one universe, one people. And we're really all one people, emanating from this unbounded mind. And you cannot travel through interstellar distances without having a clear understanding of that fundamental truth. Why? Because as soon as you try to go beyond the resonance frequency of light, and I coined a phrase called the crossing point of light, which actually, have you ever heard of a group? There's a group called Enigma. And in their third CD, they incorporated these ideas into their third CD. Go listen to it carefully. But the crossing point of light, when you hit that resonance frequency where you transcend the crossing point of light, you have entered what had been called by mystics and what have you, the etheric and astral level of energy. And you can resonate further into finer refinement, where you reach the finest level of that, which has been called the celestial. And then you can reach the finest level of that and transcend it, and you reach the world of the pure idea tone. And every single thing that exists has within it a standing resonance wave that's a pure tone, which gives rise to the form, which then manifests the object. Right? You all know this. Okay, we're going to get into the physics of this and what I call infra-ultrasound, whereby extraterrestrial spacecraft are manifest that way or materialize that way. They're not, the guys I've worked with who've actually been on the retrieval teams that have retrieved these objects after we knocked them down with electromagnetic weapon systems, alas, out of our foolishness. God help us all. Forgive them, they know not what they do. They say, there's no seams. It's as if the entire spacecraft and everything and everyone in it appeared in this seamless way. Why is that? How many people have seen one of these things up close enough to see that? And the light coming from it has this celestial quality, not like the light here. It's a light you can't explain. Why? Because the materials from which the light is emanating is so pure. And when these are analyzed in laboratories, and they have, and I know people who study the metallurgy, they are so pure that you could not even refine it with known earth sciences to that level of purity. Not even in a vacuum. And it's because these technologies permit an extraterrestrial civilization that's interstellar to be able to create a standing wave resonance frequency in tones, if you will, that then creates a blueprint, like an architect's blueprint, in the astral etheric that then coalesces and forms in its totality the entire spacecraft. Think of it. If you understand what I just said, you understand how the manufacturing of these objects occurs and how we're going to be building things on this planet in the future. Oh yeah, we already have these technologies. They're in black projects, and I'll tell you where they are. You want to know where they are? I'll show you a map. In fact, the second book, or the first book, Extraterrestrial Contact, has a list of all the key facilities. Why is it in here? Well, a member of Congress from here, Orange County, Chris Cox, who then became head of the SEC recently under Bush. Oh, my God, I'm going to get a rectal probe or something to get rid of this. I'm a medical doctor, but let's not go there today. Sorry, I have to introduce bizarre and inappropriate comments with the sublime. So you go from the ridiculous to the sublime, and that's it. But where was I? And he wanted this information. He said, well, I'm sure this is true, is what he said. I was meeting with him in his office in OC, Orange County down here. And he says, I'm sure this is true, but, committees I've been on, I've never been briefed. I said, no, you wouldn't be. You'd be in the wrong facility for that. You need to be on the 7th floor of the Xerox building in Arlington, or blah, blah, blah. He went, what? I said, oh, yeah. This is all operating in the corporate world. The robber barons that take, currently, it's around $100 billion a year out of the Treasury through black project programs into the corporate world, and they have these shell corporations and shell activities and reports they give to Congress saying we're building X, Y, Z. And they're really building ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, these things that you see zipping around that are actually manufactured up here at the Edwards Complex and out in Utah near the AA Proving Grounds in Provo, and the consortium of companies that involve SAIC in La Jolla down the road here, and Lockheed Skunk Works in Northrop, and a few of these other folks. And so I put all that together for him. And he was going, how do you have this? I said, well, I got guys who've been in these projects to step forward. He says, well, how did you do that? I said, I asked them to. I know it sounds simple and a bit quotidian. It's like you're going through life as, doing this and that, and you just say, well, would you join me in telling the public the truth about what they should have known years before I was born? Because by the time I was born, in 1955, these things were already known, the technologies were already figured out, and we didn't need anything resembling the technologies we use today. And you have to say, well, why don't we use them? Well, that's somebody's $200 trillion piggy bank. $200,000 billion in proven oil, gas, and coal reserves. And there's only 200 or 300 corporations and people who own it. Right? And so the world we have is a faint shadow of the world the divine spirit and the universal mind and these cosmic beings have wanted us to have and have been encouraging us to move to. And what you see happening on the earth today with global warming, environmental destruction, geopolitical wars over oil, and let's just say that's what it's about. I mean, all this crap, like we're going to impose Jeffersonian democracy on quack, quack, quack. You know, who believes this and that? So, I'm sorry. But the reality is that this civilization we have is retarded. And collectively insane. And we have been retarded, and it's been a plan, it's a program. And when the hidden truth and the forbidden knowledge of the book gets known by everyone, here's what you're going to rewrite: history, science and technology, physics, archaeology, anthropology, Orthodox religion. Goodbye. It's all. And as the REM song says, it's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine. And you know what? It's long overdue. It's like, boom. We should have had this done 50 to 100 years ago. And so consequences from a metasystem analysis point of view of staying with a wrong trajectory. And as the wonderful Chinese expression goes, unless we change directions, we're likely to end up where we're going. Where are we going? Okay, and that becomes the big issue. We are headed towards a terminus. And the reason we are is because we have a civilization that has been hijacked by folks who have deliberately diseducated the public for the last 100 years about the fundamental truths of science, electromagnetism, history, everything. So this has to do with the demagogue type approach to controlling the masses. And you tell a lie, you tell it often, you tell it enough, and people buy it. But you know what? Most people now know that something's very wrong, and they're fed a bunch of nonsense. And so that's why I wrote this last book. I thought it was time to really go into the detail of what the hidden truth and this forbidden knowledge is, and put it out there for the public to know. My own journey in this was one that was an unexpected one, and from one level, and very planned on another level. Because almost everything I've done since I was, about born, but certainly since I was 17 when I had my near-death experience I discussed earlier, was seen and downloaded to me in a packet-like download in that state of cosmic consciousness. And the rest of it is just playing out. But I had to decide I would do it. See, the old expression, many are called but few are chosen, is wrong. It's many are called, but few choose to answer the call. It's a mistranslation. This is the sphere of free will. We have to choose to do this. And we have the world, exactly the world, that we have chosen to allow to be. And not to act is the same as acting if the actors are bad players and you're not creating the change needed to contain it and direct it elsewhere. So at this point, wrestling with these lions on the level of normal hand-to-hand combat, we have to do it on a level of a higher state of consciousness, rooted in the development of truly enlightened cosmic consciousness and the power of its application. I'll tell you a dream I had back in 1997 that illustrates this really well. Around that time, in a couple years before that, between the lines of what I've been trying to do and have been doing, we made a lot of friends and a lot of people who didn't like what we were doing. I took this material and all these top secret witnesses, got them to get out of their national security oath trap and the documents and put them out to the public. You can see it in these books and on our website, disclosureproject.org. But in the meanwhile, I was having all these meetings with Bill Clinton's folks and the White House staff and his CIA director. And there were some folks not happy with this. And I was told, there's some folks not happy with what you're doing. I said, too bad, so sad. This is what we're going to do. It has to be done. But in those days, we didn't quite have the strategic security we have in place now. We were very vulnerable because this was started, of course, in the 90s. And Disclosure Project really didn't get going until 93. So in the years after that, there were a number of horrific things that happened. 3 people on our team were killed, murdered. I got metastatic cancer, as did my right-hand assistant, and she died within about 6 months. And I was very angry about that. I was unhappy with this, of course, and it was devastating. And if you don't know what radionic and psychotronic weapon systems are, or have never been in the receiving end of one, oof. So anyway, I mean, it's a non-local, a longitudinal scalar, a nuclear weapon bombed on you. And so with all the things that we were trying to do and knew, it didn't help. We had these terrible losses. And I'll never forget, after Bill Colby was murdered, trying to help us. He was a former CIA director who, a colonel who was his best friend, had set up a meeting between my board and Bill Colby. Because Bill Colby was reaching the end of his ride on this plane, and he knew this needed to be known. He knew the truth had to come out. He wanted it out. He knew we were destroying the planet. And he was going to meet with us, and the week he was going to meet with us, they found him floating down the Potomac River, and he was murdered. And the colonel, who was his best friend, came to my best friend's funeral wake, Sherry Adamack, God bless her. And Sherry came, the colonel came to Sherry's house, and he looked at me and said, both have had terrible losses, but we can't look back. We have to keep going forward. It was very poignant. And I said, yeah, but how? What do we do? And finally someone surfaced from that world who said, do you want protection on that level against lethal? I said, yes. I said, do it. It had been offered for years, and I didn't want to go there. And I said, make it so. And so now we're fine. Although, I keep hitting speed bumps that they're trying to throw up, but they don't do that anymore because it'll come back at them. This is a struggle for planet Earth. And, you're going to hear some things that you may be disturbed by, but every word is the truth. We are in the center of the struggle for planet Earth and its future. And it is of cosmic importance. It is of importance not just to the planet, but to other star systems, other realms, and all the way to the celestial Godhead. It is all being watched. Forget the slogan of the 60s, the whole world's watching, the whole cosmos is watching. And we have got to get this right. Now, in the context of these experiences, I had this dream. I was over in England. We were doing one of these expeditions that we do where we train people to go into cosmic awareness. And I teach a technique, which is on this meditation CD. I don't know if it's up here. It's this one. And I finally went to a professional studio and did it, so you don't do it while you're driving, because you'll theta wave out and fly off into the cosmos. But, literally, it's really very good. But what happened was that, during this turmoil, we were sitting in this manor house that we had our team. And we were going to the crop circles and doing these stations, and then of course, you've all heard of the 1992 landing. We had an extraterrestrial vehicle that appeared right near in Alton Barnes, about 10 feet above the ground, signaling to us, and we actually were on board the craft in consciousness and communicating, resonating back and forth. We'll get into this in a little while. But we were doing this, but I didn't feel like going out that particular night because I had just had all these things happen. I had a metastatic malignant melanoma, which is the deadliest of all. I was not expected to live long. And Sherry, my best friend, had metastatic breast cancer that had already gone to other organs in her body. And we were sitting in this room and upset, of course. And all of a sudden, I'd asked our team to go out and do their field work without us that night. I'm sitting in this room upstairs, the bay window, his old 1600s house, and here comes this object, about the size of my fist, maybe a little bigger. Through the window, stops, it's this scintillating orb, moves over to the fireplace and elongates, and it's about a 3-foot high extraterrestrial being. And he was there giving us his love and condolences, but gratitude for the work we were doing on behalf of the cosmic good. And Sherry and I just were awestruck. And this was very real. Lights on like this, you could see it. Beautiful. Now, I would have never given mention to this Except that a team that was out on the manor house grounds of this old estate were out. I told them to go out there by 10:30 because my inner guidance knew that something was going to happen of great importance about then. And Linda was there, and several of the people here were there. Well, they were standing out there, and they saw the part of this extraterrestrial event that I didn't. And there was this beautiful orb, lit, scintillating, blue-white, that came out of space, flew over the trees, and went right into the window. And Ron Russell, who's a very well-known crop circle researcher, who's a very good friend of mine, space artist who did the artwork for these books, said, "That's Steven's room." And they went, "Oh." And of course then the rest is what happened. Well, this extraterrestrial being was there, and it was a state of beautiful love and just enormous, not at all like what you hear about in the UFO stuff. Those are PLFs that we're making. The scary things, they're on ARBs that we're manufacturing at Lockheed, and those creatures that people think are ETs we're manufacturing. Oh, it's a whole long story. It's all in the book. What you don't know about this stuff is everything. And the more, it's like this woman, I'm sorry. It was like, Lawrence Rockefeller and Mrs. Boutros-Ghali hosted me at this thing in New York on one of these salons for the New York 100, and I was there, and this matron came up to me and said, "I'll have you know, I've read 26 books, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Yes, my dear, it just means you've absorbed into your consciousness 26 times more rubbish than if you'd only read one book." So, ouch. I know, how blunt. No time for mincing words. So, you'll get the straight stuff up from me, it's just how I am. But one of the things that happened that year, in context of these violent things happening to Bill Colby and our team, and there was a member who was killed helping us get this stuff out. And I thought to myself, oh my God, we're going to DEF CON 5 and we've just started. And there was a part of me, I'm very, what did Rumsfeld like to say, forward-leaning? And get my way in the ERs. Boom, here it goes, bam. They're an alpha male sort of person. But on one level, that's one part of my aspect. The other aspect's very loving, a big teddy bear. But I was really pissed off. But that night, that week when we were in England, I had this dream. And in the dream, I went into this lucid astral dream state. We were awake in the dream. You know what I mean by this? And there was this enormous, vicious lion. Now, the leadership of this so-called MJ12 group have been called the Lions of MJ12. And this lion was stalking, was getting closer to kill me. And it was very, very intent on, I was the prey and it was the predator. And I didn't respond to that with fear or anger. And what I did was go into this place beyond the placeless, the unbounded. And I went into this state of divine love and went and asked for the forgiveness of this creature and the enlightenment of the creature. And we did this dance with the lion. We went in this, whoa, I hit my head on that. And we went, being 6'4" has its disadvantage. And we went around and we're doing this. And after a little while, we're connecting eye to eye with this enormous, ferocious lion. And then it became very friendly. And then I got closer, and I put my arm around him. And we sat there, and it was purring a big. And then it flipped on its back, and I was petting its tummy. And that's exactly what we're doing. It's exactly. It's a dream metaphor for exactly what we're doing. We're engaging the lion, but not on the basis of the consciousness of it attacking, but on the consciousness of who we are, of peace, of universal peace, of divine consciousness, of cosmic awareness and love. And it's happening. It's happening on every strata of society. Now, I don't know how far this is being taped, I presume. So certain restrictions on that. But let me tell you that there is a major country in the world, a G7 country, that has decided to do this with us and have invited us to become the primary contact team to precipitate an event where these extraterrestrial vehicles, with the full support of their Air Force, Space Command, everything, land and meet the leadership of this country, with us facilitating this, so that this can then be proximally disclosed to the world. And that's what we're doing. Imminent. What we're working on is imminently. It's fraught. So amongst the leadership worldwide in this power structure, we now know there's about 50% of them or more who support disclosure, peace, and getting these technologies out that could give us, the world would become a rose garden. A rose garden. And they know that. And they're breaking with the hardcore eschatological, everybody know what eschatology is, the study of how the world's going to end and setting up the conditions for the destruction of earth so Christ returns. It's all this sort of misinterpretation of Scripture. I mean, those are key elements of this secret group. They're really weird religious kooks. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone. I don't mean to be. Just the way it is. You know, if you think the world's going to literally end so that Christ will come back down on a cloud, you're sadly mistaken. It's never happened that way. Because Earth is a womb for the creation of intelligent life. And she is a conscious being. And if you listen to her, go out of the city, she will tell you that she is suffering, but that she loves you unconditionally. And I had this experience with Earth when I was out in space. And I recount this story in this book. And there is such love that you can't bear it. I couldn't tell the story for years without choking up and crying, but she is suffering a lot. And yet, the Earth is waiting for us to lift this burden. And it will be lifted one way or another. Because we overstayed the current way we're living by 50 to 100 years. And there's only so much oxygen to use up, and only so much that can happen. And then the Earth will shake off her burden. But it isn't going to be what people think. There could be kinds of changes on a physical level. But what it's really doing, as the native people know, is the time of the great purification, the time of the great cleansing, and the reestablishment of civilization. And here's the civilization that we are going to establish. In this state of consciousness, and with forgiveness of all the things that have happened in the past, because the greatest attribute of all is to forgive. Even those who may wish to harm you, like this lion, forgave. We became fast friends. And so, what I see happening is that the information will come out, but with it, on short order, these technologies and sciences, these wondrous sciences that are so amazing. And they're amazing because we live now in a world where all of our energy and manufacturing is really violent. It's early industrial 1900s level of consciousness, no more. We're still burning coal for 57% of our electricity. The manufacturing, I mean, it's all very, very primitive. And yet, there are sciences and technologies extant that have been secreted into these classified projects where we could have a world without poverty, without pollution, and where all of our needs are being met through this level of energy that's called the quantum vacuum flux field. Now, later we'll have the consciousness technologies, but we have to have the consciousness to support this next level of technology, and that's the consciousness of peace. Because every science and technology can be used for war, and these technologies must not be. And yet we cannot live without them on Earth, with 6 billion people wanting to have air conditioning and lights and drive vehicles. The truth is, the fundamental basis for the advancement of our civilization is the establishment of universal peace. And that is a spiritual event in consciousness, which is why I'm at this conscious life, I don't know what it's called, consciousness, I don't know what we're called, but something about conscious, so I like to come here because it has consciousness in it. Sorry, or what day it is, I just go there around there. But we have that as our primary purpose, and that's why we're on this planet, whatever role we have. And don't worry if it's a thimbleful or a bucket that you're carrying. We all have to carry this water. We all have to carry this. If we carry it together, it'll make it easier for all of us. The most powerful understanding of this happens on the level of conscious mind, where you realize and you see and you visualize this future. And no matter what happens in the world, with the rest of it falling into shambles, you know that on that, out of that, is going to emerge this civilization. And a civilization that is interstellar, peaceful, using technologies that forever banish the harm of the earth and the disparity that we see today. We're at least 80% of the world is living in heartbreaking poverty. It's all artificial. It's all unnecessary. And we can do better, and we must. This is the time for the unveiling of all this information and of the establishment of these sciences. A lot of people say, well then, why hasn't it happened? Well, the good people keep getting cut down, and the good people keep disappearing. And why? Because they reach out enough to their brothers and sisters, the masses. In 1990, when I had this experience that said, found this organization to make peaceful contact with these extraterrestrial civilizations and get this information disclosed, a national security attorney met with me, and he said, whatever you do, don't do this quietly. Because if you do, you're a dead man walking. You've got to have not a few, 1,000, but tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people who know what you're doing. And that's what we've done. That's why I went on Larry King Live and all these shows, God help us all. But the only thing worse than the group keeping this stuff secret is the big media. It's the most corrupt thing on the planet. Unbelievable. But you have to deal with the world we're given, and that's what we are doing. It's the best we can do. But we help and involvement, because in your meditation and in your thought and in your action and in your networking, we can make this happen. And that's exactly how we've gotten this information out to literally hundreds of millions of people. And now have a major world power saying, yes, it's time to end the secrecy. It's time to make peaceful contact. It's time to move this ball further down the path. It's a wonderful time, and fraught with all kinds of possibilities. The good news is that the fullness of our civilization is already there. And on a celestial level, what I call the realm of the Empyrean realm and a celestial blueprint, it's there. And it's so close. It's here, and it's emerging in various places. It's like a fractal, and it's emerging. But it has to have this potentiation of consciousness in contact that we make with these extraterrestrial civilizations. The key is the experience of this cosmic mind. But so too on Earth, we have to be in that state of consciousness with that power behind the vision and then act through the vision. So it has to be in consciousness, thought, action. All of it. No more sitting in the caves. Did that when I was younger. My misspent youth, I would spend 6 or 8 hours a day in meditation and going into. And I had all kinds of experiences. One time I was in such a wonderful state of bliss, and had been meditating for about 8 hours a day, and I went out in the spring, and I was in so much joy that I lifted up and levitated, walking across this true story, like from here to that wall over there, about 3 feet up. And then I started thinking about it. How am I doing this? Lesson, you have to get out of your own way. Let go of God. And in reality, this is a very important truth about this time. It's all trying to move through us. We're stopping it. We've put up the blockade. We can take it down. We have to empower ourselves to do it. Not look for Big Brother to do it, or the White House, or Congress, or some other spiritual leader, or the Dalai Lama. You, and you, and you. each person has to own who they are as a cosmic universal being and move and manifest that good future. Otherwise it cannot happen. Nor will it happen by these visitors landing on the White House lawn and imposing this. If you want to see how effective trying to impose such a change on a civilization is, visit Baghdad. Don't work. And they're wise enough to know it. And I've said this to people who've asked me, I mean, at the Pentagon, well, gosh, you know, and these are the white hats at the Pentagon. These are the guys who want this stuff out, but who are themselves kept out of the compartmented projects. And most of them are white hats. Believe it or not, they are our biggest supporters. We're talking admirals and generals, and in other countries too. But they're terrified of this other bunch, who are, I call them Murder Incorporated. They are. But that'd be a good title for a book, Murder Incorporated. But we have to understand that these big meta changes in the world don't happen from one person. It happens by a lot of people getting it and taking action together. Prayer, meditation, thought, action. And that's what we do when we go out under the stars and make contact with these extraterrestrial beings. Let me explain something that we did just this past week. We were up in, how many people have been to Joshua Tree National Park up here? Okay, so you're familiar with the territory. And we had this wonderful experience. And I guess I'll stand up. Oh. My God. We went, what we were really doing this past week with about 25 people in Palm Springs was sharing 15 years of experiences of going out in the wilderness and to various places around the world with a interplanetary contact team to make contact with these extraterrestrial people and all the encounters we've had. That's the next thing that's going to come out. Because it needs to come out what's going on with these other governments who are saying, yes, let's make open contact. And it'd be like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, except we're doing it for it. Because the knowledge of how to do that is to some people esoteric, but I'm going to explain to you how to do it so you can go home and do it. Tomorrow in the workshop, that's what we're going to spend most of the time doing in meditation. And also on this CD. But what we did was to go out a couple nights out to Joshua Tree Wilderness. And we sat in a circle, went into this state of consciousness. And we led a meditation that enables people to be aware of the mind in its pure form, and then go into the vast and infinite ocean of consciousness and see that they are one of the waves on this ocean, but the wave and the ocean are one. The water is the same. The light of consciousness is the same. And go deeper and deeper, and then do a technique where we then become together as a group able to see what people call remote view in deep space and connect to these extraterrestrial vehicles and invite them and vector them in. And as we vector them in, you can feel it when it's going to happen because it's very, very precise. When everyone gets into a resonance frequency together, that's when it happens. And so we were out there and had a number of craft, ET craft that appeared over the desert at some distance and were interacting with the group. But on the second night we went out there, we were in the group, and right above us, slightly to the south, was a burst of brilliant white light that everyone saw. And it was an ET craft that was manifesting in the celestial energy form and was streaming this energy into the group, packets of knowledge into everyone there. There were people there who'd never been there before, and the wife of our audio guy doing the book dictation for us didn't think any of this was possible, and it was unbelievable. And at the end of the meditation, we do a prayer for Earth and its healing with celestial beings, the extraterrestrial civilization, the good people on Earth, our group. It's all lined up. At the very end of it, to the east, down the path, this beautiful extraterrestrial craft completely appeared, and everyone looking saw it, and shone this light back to us, and then said goodbye. That was just two nights ago, or 3 nights ago. And you should join us. This thing, we do this several times a year, and we're going to be doing it on the wilderness, the National Seashore, Cape Hatteras National Seashore on the Outer Banks of North Carolina in April, and then in this remote area of Crestone, Colorado in June, I think. And then at Mount Shasta up here, we go every year, where we had the most, you would believe the photographs and the video we have from Mount Shasta, and this past year, the things that happened. It's too much to even bear. I sat here for 40 hours. I couldn't begin to tell you 10% of what's happened. And so people say, how can that be? How, you know, they'll say, how many times have you seen these ET vehicles? Not the ARVs, because those buzz around sometimes too. And we know the difference between one of the alien reproduction vehicles that are made at Lockheed are so different from these others. They're not conscious like the ET craft are. The ET craft are themselves consciousness. They are conscious. They are conscious nano-bio machines. They're living conscious technology. It is not your granddad's Oldsmobile. Amazing stuff. Now, the key to this is really very simple. It sounds like a lot to people, but it's really all within you. Because the mind, whereby you're all awake at this moment, is the infinite being of all that there is. And so when you connect to that level of the conscious mind, the ability to see and to connect and to vector them to you and to interact becomes so simple. It's so simple. It is not a difficult thing to do. You know, there's a wonderful saying in the Sufi tradition, knowledge is a single point, but the foolish have multiplied it. The truth of our own reality is that the entirety of the universe is folded within us, the totality of it, every aspect. And so we are all windows to the infinite and the unbounded and the omnipresent. And by using that faculty, folded within the reality of every person on Earth, and also every extraterrestrial being, because the reality of man, I don't mean man as in a male gender, is a universal morphogenic field, and it's all throughout the cosmos. They all, you know, head, 2 arms, 2 legs. They may have very different appearances otherwise, but there is a universality of, like what Sheldrake talks about, the morphogenic field propagation, and that's what you find, and that's what we have found. Except we're dealing with civilization, multiple civilizations, dozens if not hundreds of them that we've seen, that are able to go through the crossing point of light, the resonance frequency of a crossing point of light, and go many times faster than the speed of light, because the speed of light is irrelevant, because you no longer are locked in the linear space-time cosmos. You're moving through the etheric astral. So a spacecraft 1,000 light years away can then resonantly appear near Earth. And it isn't instant, because there's the coefficient of drag of it being adhered to the etheric material cosmos, so it can re-enter. It's like a re-entry phenomenon. So it may take a month or a few days, but it isn't taking thousands of years. But we had this is a lot of arcane physics that you don't need to, you're not interested in probably. But well, it's too much. But besides, I'm just a country doctor from Virginia. I really don't. No, I have a good qualitative understanding of all these technologies, but I don't have a good. I mean, my wife hooks up the VCR and the DVD player. I mean, I just, what is this? And hurl it through the window. I'm hopeless, useless. I'm not good with machines, except defibrillators and respirators and things like that. But we are, in fact, moving to a technological civilization that's both enlightened and technological. But it's enlightened technologies. It isn't this brutal of atoms and smashing of coal and burning of oil and smashing of iron ore to make a Buick. I mean, that's all stuff that is 100 years old. No one ever asked the question. We have integrated circuits, which actually came out of studying ET vehicles. We have night vision. We have fiber optics, which is also an ET reverse engineered technology, true. We have all this stuff. But all this high-tech stuff is running off of electricity, power, coming out of coal-fired power plants for 57% of the electricity in the United States. That's 1800s. No one ever asked the question, why don't we have a fundamental new science for generating energy, power? Well, we do, but it's hidden in these classified projects. It has been stolen from us. And we need to change that, because we're killing Gaia. We're damaging the earth, and she only has so much patience. In fact, some years ago, when I had this experience and was asked to form this group, this organization, here I am rattling around in an emergency department taking care of stabbings and shootings and, car wrecks and all the fun stuff. Medically speaking, it's really more interesting than a sore throat. But I know I'm a little twisted, but people travel with me, love it, because I'm like, oh, there's a terrible accident, I hop out and can do whatever. I'm a very hands-on kind of guy. But this experience happened where I was taken into deep space with this extraterrestrial craft that came into the front yard in Biltmore Forest next to the Biltmore House in Asheville. And as I went out into space with these ETs, we did what we did many years before when I was 18, when I sat on the mountaintop and meditated and found one of them that appeared right on my right hand shoulder. And we went into this deep state of meditation, and then I went into celestial vision, where I could see that each planet was emerging from this field of energy. It was teeming with energy. And so the empty space, it ain't empty. It's teeming with energy, it's infinite energy. And I saw it at the level of its emergence. And so if you can visualize this, as you would visualize deep space like you see in a photograph, but then visualize seeing all the stars and planets, but they're all swimming in this ocean of light that is consciousness manifesting as this earliest form. Energy. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And I went into this state of God consciousness, where the celestial level was brought to me, and I turned and I was shown each planet. And I was introduced to each planet, and each planet had its own consciousness. And I was stunned, and this sounds so corny, but Mars was male. It was a male. And Earth is female. Absolutely it is. And so is Mercury, I think, is gay, a bit androgynous. Kind of cool dude. And then, well, it's true. So the whole thing. Now, this experience with Earth was so beautiful because I connected to her awake being. Now, she's not a human. And she lives and has her operation according to the divine will and purpose, actually, to the cosmic mind. She is a handmaiden of the unbounded, just like Mars is a servant of the unbounded. Beautiful, and it's true. And the Earth, though, had this crushing love for us, but this sadness. But I connected with that, but then I became very aware of the deeper level, beyond the matter and beyond even the astral light and form. And I heard the tone. And every single planet, pure tone, a standing wave, resonance. Different one, I'm not musical, as you can tell. But beautiful. I wish I was musical, because I could recreate the pure tone, harmonic, of each celestial body. And I was introduced to each planet then at that causal level of the pure tone of the thought tone. That's what a mantra is, by the way. What is a mantra? It's the sound of a thought. That's all it is. So at that level, I heard the pure tone of that planetary body, and then that star, and then that star, and then all of them together. And then I went into a state where I heard everything that was in the manifest cosmos blending into one pure harmonic tone, the primal tone, which is the primal thought, emanating from the morning, the dawn, unbounded absolute mind. It was one of the most stunning experiences of my life, surpassing or equaling the near-death experience I had. And that's why I formed CSETI and the Disclosure Project and this work, because I knew that this information and the science behind it and the cosmology behind it had to come out. And if we allow it to be experienced, lock that door so we don't have people disturbing the lecture. If we do this, then what happens is that on that level of pure consciousness, we can enter into a state like the rishis did, and the enlightened beings have, and find the pure tone and manifest that world and that vision. That's what we're doing when we go out. Now, one person said, well, these craft that are being seen, they're conjuring them up out of your mind. And I just smiled. Whose mind? What is mind? There's only one mind. Erwin Schrödinger was right. I mean, the father of quantum mechanics, when he said the total number of minds in the universe is one. That is, it is a singularity. And no matter how many times you may want to trap it in your ego and individuality, it is always one. Infinite, unbounded, omnipresent, eternal consciousness. And that's who we are. It's beautiful. Experiencing that is so powerful alone, but it is 1,000-fold, exponentially more when you're with a group. And you know, Dr. John, I don't know if you know the Princeton Engineering, the Peer Lab at Princeton that Dr. John had for a while, where he was the professor of engineering at Princeton, and he did experiments with people's thought and mind being put on random number generators and various mechanical systems and the effect it would have. Well, it turns out that there would be an effect with one person. I mean, not someone trained in meditation, just someone off the street. But if there were two people who loved each other and were connected to each other, the effect wasn't additive, it was exponential. Now imagine what happens when we're sitting with 20 to 40 people out under the stars in Joshua Tree or on Mount Shasta, and everyone is going into that state of unbounded consciousness. And we're then remote viewing deep space, and we become deep space. We become the mind of the unboundedness. And then we connect with these extraterrestrial civilizations, which have bodies and worlds that are very highly developed, technologically and spiritually. They couldn't get here otherwise. And we connect then with the celestial realm and the level of the avatar, people say ascended masters, the avatar level, the most great light, the primal thought, Brahma consciousness. And then here it comes. So people go, well, then you are creating it from your own consciousness. I said, yes, because all this is that. The mind, that level of the conscious mind, which is the awakeness whereby you're conscious at this moment, is always in its fullness if you become silent and pure and just be. That's what meditation's for. But that's just the beginning. See, the beginning of our protocol is samadhi. That's where we start. And then we go. So this is the world we have to create, where this is understood. And these civilizations that are out there, who are watching patiently, assisting when they can without being overbearing, get it. And they get it fully. Why? Because you cannot be a civilization that dematerializes a craft and travels through interstellar space, interfacing with this level of the cosmos and be in anything in a state that would resemble hostile. Now, I often get into this because, the whole New Age UFO things, that they're the good ETs, and they are blonde and blue-eyed and look like from their Scandinavian beige, And then there are those bad ETs. Oh God, cosmic racism. Do we really need to go? I mean, it's like, oh please, the New Age is the oldest age in the world. This is the banality and the bane, actually, of the past age that's dying, is the consciousness of separation. And this state of mind allows no separation. None. Not with anyone. Not even the ferocious lion that wants to devour you and has just killed your best friend, and two people helping you do the most difficult that has happened on this planet in the last 500,000 years. So that's the state of consciousness. Ouch, I don't know how I said that, but that's the state of consciousness you have to go to. And that's the magic of true forgiveness born from the compassion of the Buddha. And the Buddha is this state within us. It is the state. And then you have compassion for all things. We have, in this project, traveled all these distances and all these experiences. And yet we look around us in the world and we know that we're the bridge generation. As you go out here, and here's LAX, I call it X-Lax. Like it when I leave, and it's really X-Lax. Goodbye. Quack, quack. Don't you love that in Will and Grace where Karen goes, quack, quack? One of my favorite sayings in the but we're really the bridge between a time that is receding and this beautiful future, the hallmark of which is this universal peace. But it has to be within ourselves and manifested out there. That doesn't mean that we don't interact with the world. On the contrary, this is the time for the enlightened people, all of you who understand what conscious mind is and its power and the power of meditation and prayer, to engage the world in ways that you may be afraid to. But you know what? Arjuna was right. I mean, Krishna was right when he told Arjuna on the battlefield, a little of this, capital T, eliminates all fear. A lot of people have asked me, haven't you been terrified doing this? I said, no. Because my shelf life expired when I was 17. I was very sick and died. And so I realized two things from that, a bunch of things, but primarily, one is that there is no death, and secondly, that the conscious mind whereby we are awake is the cosmic being standing within each of us. And it was absolutely clear. This from a child who was raised as a devout atheist. And, we were not allowed to even entertain the idea that such things could be possible. And so we have this within us, and so we have to then manifest it, but we do it in all the interactions. Now it's interesting because I mentioned earlier that when we were doing the disclosure project with all these military witnesses, and we had a national press conference that was viewed all over the world, and huge, I think. We went that day and the following days to some members of Congress to meet with them, because we said, look, we're going to hold hearings on this. And I think the very first man we went to go see, we saw Teddy Kennedy and all these people, but the first one was a guy named Dennis Kucinich, who I thought was here, but he left or didn't come or whatever. But anyway, we were meeting with him. And as we went into his office and we sat down, we had 9 people, military guys, all kinds. And at the end of it, I was facilitating and not saying much. I was letting all these top secret military people share what they knew for this congressman, going around in a circle. And at the end of it, they took maybe 5 minutes each, and at the end of it, they made a few comments and remarks and pulled it together. And he looked at me as the leader of the group, and he said, in all my years in Congress, I have never felt a spirit like I did today when you entered this office. And that was the darshan, not mine per se, but of the purpose of what we're doing. It is very powerful and it is very protected. And the second thing he said was, the fact that you were here means that time is short. I know this has to be dealt with. He's a very enlightened man. And it's interesting because those of you who know him should say, look, now that you're chairman of the domestic part of the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee, let's have a little hearing. You can call it. Time to put their feet to the fire, these politicians. Now, I'm just a country doctor from Virginia. But what I can deliver to that committee are those people who have this positive proof, the documents, the evidence, and the men and a few women who've been in these projects who under oath will testify to what this is. And the whole world will be watching that. Ask him to do it. Write his office and ask him to convene hearings this year so this is done. Because you know what? If the United States doesn't step up to this, it's going to be done elsewhere. I can tell you, listen to what I said a little while ago. It is going to happen one way or another. So it's very important that it happen globally. And we have people now on some key committee chairmanship positions who know this is real, know it's true, and they need to walk the walk, no matter what the cost. Now it can be heavy, the price for this, but it's worth it. Because if we go to that place of what we see as who our true self really is, what the true nature of our being is, it is beyond all fear. And you can see that you do what you need to do. And this is why, through my life, since I was 17, 30-some years, my whole purpose has defined how I can manifest this vision and help be part of a force to create this good future, not only in consciousness and contact, but in the technologies. And we need your help there too. We're men that we're working with and amazing scientists, but they're working out of their basements and they're working separate and there's no synergy. And the technologies are there if we can put it all together. And we have got to find somebody who's not a Nazi about money, because I don't care about money at all, but who will put the funding in, it's a modest amount, $10, $20 million, and put an R&D effort together to build up these systems. We have at least half a dozen of them that could be done in 18 months. And goodbye oil, goodbye gas, goodbye coal, goodbye central utilities, hello new operating system for the planet. Of course, it's not risk-free, but you think you're going to put this other civilization to bed and wake up and stand up this new world risk-free? If you want risk-free, go eat Cheetos in front of the boob tube watching J. Okay, but that's not why you're here. You're here to take these risks. You're here to be the bodhisattvas, all of you. You're here to stand this civilization up and manifest it, because it's already there on this divine level within our own consciousness, and you can see it. You know what I'm telling you is true, that this world is ready to appear, and why it hasn't is a mystery, and the mystery is locked within ourselves, and it's because we have to have enough of us who come together to manifest that good world. And it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of action, but it can happen. We've gone this distance, and we'll go the rest of the way. Because the time that we are entering is a cycle that's a 500,000-year cycle, that will, the hallmark of which will be unbroken peace, universal peace, the abolition completely of poverty on this planet, the dawning of enlightenment, first in certain cells and then worldwide, and our civilization becoming an enlightened, cosmic conscious civilization going out amongst the universe. And we won't go there until then. Why? Because there's a universal order that prohibits any civilization to get too far out of its biosphere unless it has embraced universal peace. You know, back in the 90s when I was doing these briefings for President Clinton and his CIA director Woolsey and all these folks, I was asked to go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where some of the debris from the early retrieval of these extraterrestrial vehicles were taken. And I was meeting with the Foreign Aerospace Science and Technology Center, which had been FTD, the Foreign Technology Division. It's now called the National Air Intelligence. They keep changing their name because they don't want anyone to track them. But that's where the old original facility, back from the 40s and 50s. And I was meeting with this colonel who was there and this suit, a civilian who was a spook. And the colonel turned to me and he said, well, what if some of these civilizations are hostile to us? I said, well, with all due respect, given the utterly stupid things we've been doing, targeting them with electromagnetic pulse weapons and the like for the last 60 years, if they were hostile, this planet would be a cinder floating through space and we wouldn't be having this conversation. And he looked at me. I said, and you know it. I said, don't try to stand up another excuse for ramping up the military-industrial complex. Star Wars, that paradigm is over. And if you don't retire it, you're going to have your clock cleaned. And this is how I say it, was like kaboom. It was going, whoa. But it was interesting because I encountered this in the civilian world because so much disinformation has been put out there about extraterrestrials and why they're here and these scary UFOs. And well, some of them are scary, but they're manufactured in Utah and are manned by creatures that look like aliens with bug eyes that are human-made. And they abduct people because they want to sow the seeds of fear so that people eventually will support Star Wars and the next level of conflict. This is what Wernher von Braun, the inventor of the rocket for crying out loud, told his personal spokeswoman before he died, who's on our team. And von Braun said, you know, we were going to have this Cold War because we had to have it. They wanted it, the machine wanted it, the war tears on. Then they were going to roll that, close that down and have global terrorism. This was before 9/11. We put this testimony out, I might add. Then it would be followed by a threat from space, a la the movie Independence Day and all these other things, that we would completely manufacture through elaborate psychotronic, radionic, disinformation campaigns to scare the hell out of the people. Because through fear, people get shut down and they become little. When we're afraid, we become small. We're children again, but not the kind of children, not childlike, childish. So we become childish. And we give up our power to Big Brother. And that's exactly what the controllers want. Don't do it. Don't buy into it. It's a program. Well thought out, well funded. And the truth is that these visitors are here to welcome us with arms at the time that we become peaceful, universal, and ready to go in space peacefully. But until then, we'll be tossed back like a bad penny. You know, my uncle, who was the chief project engineer for the lunar module that built the thing that took Neil Armstrong to the moon. And I have talked about this at great length. He lives out here in Southern California. He's still alive. He's 86. And it was interesting because in doing this work, I've gotten to know a number of Apollo astronauts, and someone who's on our team used to work very closely with Neil Armstrong. And he had admitted that when they landed, the crater above where we landed was crowded, I'm quoting, with extraterrestrial vehicles watching. But he was also said that we were basically warned off the moon. It's like flagged off. Why? Because that was part of the arms race. We were doing it competitively with the Soviets. Remember all the brouhaha when Sputnik went up and we were like, oh my God. So we didn't go into space as a peaceful world civilization. We were going out there as a competing military. And the space program of this and other countries have always been run by the military and intelligence programs. That's got to end. We need to go into space as a peaceful civilization, Earth and in space. And that's the only way we're going to be welcome. And rightly so. Why? There are civilizations out there that are at our level of technological capability. They're not interplanetary, but they don't even have a concept for war and have never had fighting. And we would be an enormous threat to such a world. And so the problem is not out in space. Look in the mirror. It's always the case. And so there's this anthropocentric projection that we engage in, where people are afraid of these things. Afraid of that? And you're living right here, just a few miles from the Edwards complex, where all this nasty stuff's going on. You don't need to be afraid of space or anyone coming from space. Because if they're coming with that consciousness, they're also contained in their biosphere until they're ready to learn this lesson of universal. That is the entry ticket to interstellar and interplanetary travel. And without it, you are not allowed. It is like a no-go. That is the truth. Now, so much information is disinformation is out there that have convinced and brainwashed people that, well, some of them are wonderful, but then there are these others that are the bad guys. And that's why we need all this military hardware in space, Earth, from these nasty, marauding aliens. Oh, come on. First of all, if they were here with those capabilities, we're talking about technologies that go beyond the speed of light. Secondly, therefore, the weapon systems would be using technologies that are longitudinal, that travel at infinite velocity, and could do anything. So, I mean, this whole concept is absolutely insane, and it's a brainwashed program designed to cause people to buy into the next level of control and fear. Free your mind. I love that En Vogue song, you know, free your mind. Yeah, they're so good. You can free your mind from this, because this is a program that has been set up to cause people to be afraid and buy into the power of a global kleptocracy that has seized power and seized technology and wants to keep it like that for as long as they can. And the only way they can isn't through any sort of material force. It's through the influence of the mind. And so we have to free our consciousness from these thoughts and see the truth and walk into that future fearlessly and speak truth to power. All of us. And we can. And that's what we're doing. How much time do we have left?
30 minutes.
All right. So what I want to do is open this up to some questions from folks, because I know that you've got to have some questions by now. But as we do that, speak with a loud voice, and I'll repeat the question so everyone can hear it, if that's okay. So, yes, sir.
I was just curious if I was told you had talked to CTP Energy, Drazen Vermont, about consciousness technologies. I didn't know if you knew much about it, or if they were just saying that they had talked to you guys about it.
I don't remember. I have my science advisor deals with those folks, but we have been talking to a lot of people who have technologies that need to be further developed, and hundreds. Unfortunately, they're all scattered in various places, and they don't have a strategic base it out, and that's what we've created. So to do that, however, there's going to have to be some really serious support that happens, and where it'll come from remains to be seen. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
My first time to hear you, and you mentioned twice about a 500,000-year cycle. Where are you coming up with that number? Where is that coming from?
The 500,000-year cycle. Well, these are these meta-yugas. We're closing out a 452,000 or so years cycle. And this is known in a lot of traditions. I mean, Hopi, Vedic, a lot of traditions. And the cycle we're in now is the closing of one and the opening of another, which is why there's so much chaos, because it's the intersection of these two periods. And people have one foot in one and one in the other. So what we have to do is extricate the foot that's still in the one that's going down the black hole and establish the other. And it really is a spiritual test, but it requires also a lot of specific action that we need to achieve. And this is, I want to point out something. In the past cycles, there were periods of enlightenment in localized areas, like you've heard of the Shambhala kingdom. That actually literally did exist. And I'm sure that's the Sanskrit, and Sanskrit's beautiful. I used to tutor people in Sanskrit. Pavitra, pavitrova, sarvavastam gatopiva, yasmare pundari kakshan, savaya bhyantara sushi, avahana. But we have these sort of remnants, but see, at that time, they were isolated areas that were enlightened. The hallmark of this era, is that the entire globe will rise to that level of enlightenment. And it's not going to happen, but it's going to happen, because we will be a global civilization in a state of not only high technology that's non-violent to the earth and living in peace with the earth, but the consciousness that will go with it. And we will eventually become a civilization where the entire earth and everyone on it is in this state of God consciousness and celestial. And the technologies themselves will have that celestial quality, because they will be manifested and manufactured, if you want to use that concept, from this finest celestial into the material. And by the way, those of you, I don't know how many people have been close up to one of these ET craft. You can raise your hand if you've seen one pretty close up. It's unmistakable the light it gives out. It is like, people say it's not of this world, and it isn't, because and even though it's there and it's, quote, real, whatever real is, but it's in such that state of purity. But eventually our whole civilization will just be like one little area in the Himalayas or one little area in the Pacific. It'll be the entire world. And spaceship Earth will be this place of enlightenment, this island of cosmic consciousness and enlightenment, very advanced civilization, which we will then be, our progeny, will be ETs to other civilizations. And so the cycle goes and goes and goes and goes forever. Forever. It's beautiful. Yes, sir.
In your understanding, regarding the population of the Earth, will there need to be adjustments made to come into balance with the Earth on that level as we move through? And
you're speaking of the Malthusian dilemma, I'm sure, or the whole thing with too many people. And actually, the Earth carrying capacity is around 15 billion. We're at some now, but we're past our carrying capacity for this level of technology. Now, I want to be clear what I'm saying here. I'm not opposed to birth control, and I'm not opposed to, but in reality, we're in a time now that's the worst of all worlds. We have just enough knowledge so that the population keeps growing exponentially, but we haven't been allowed to have the technology knowledge so that we can live in harmony with nature. So you have 6 billion people wanting to use gasoline engines and drive SUVs and have electricity fired with coal-fired power plants. This isn't sustainable. So the question is not numbers and quantity, it's the quality and the type of tech footprint we're leaving on the Earth. Because the number of people is not nearly the issue, particularly if you understand that when you have, let's say the machines that I have seen that are prototypes that generate energy from this quantum vacuum flux field, they're generating this energy from the fabric of space around it. There are no transmission lines to it, and it's running whatever. But if you have, quote, free energy, which is what this is, you can have 100% recycling, 100% scrubbing of all effluent from manufacturing, 100% scrubbing of everything that goes into the air. It's feasible now, and I remember talking to Archibald MacLeish about this in the 70s. We have the ability now, but they use so much energy to do it that it becomes the point of diminishing return because we're using fossil fuels for most of our energy, you see? So when you have this shift happen, and it is in consciousness, but it's also very much in science and technology. There's no separation. Forget this duality between spirituality and science. It's all one big issue. and there's one big solution, and it's us. And this technology allows humanity to live without cannibalizing the Earth's resources, defiling the water, defiling the air, and, I might add, creating these enormous disparities between the haves and the have-nots, which breeds so much social injustice and hatred and warfare and on and on and on and on. So it's the single biggest change in the known history of the world. And the Industrial Revolution to now, those 150 years, will look like a little, on a graph it'd be this much change. What I'm talking about is this much. But that's why it's secret. Because the people trying to maintain their grip on the world order don't want that change. Why? Because when power generation is decentralized, power becomes decentralized. Here's why. I mean, geopolitical power. When every village in India or sub-Saharan Africa has something, an device where they can provide all their energy needs without any pollution, without building a multi-trillion-dollar power grid with transmission lines, without a supply line of coal or oil going to it, and can have manufacturing and electrification and all this, suddenly geopolitical power is going to shift. Why? Think about it. Think about it. What does geopolitical power come from? Your economic prowess and clout. All of America and Western Europe is 600 million people. The world is 6 billion. But if your population number gave you geopolitical power, China and India would be the most powerful geopolitical entities, and they're not. And it's because of this issue. But when this happens, suddenly at the geopolitical round table, we'll actually have to put a seat there for all these other civilizations and races. And there's a lot of racism to the world order today, but think it's not. So this is a huge issue. And people say, well, yeah, but wouldn't they make a lot of money from selling these machines? And I go, yeah, but you think the money is made on the engine that's in a Suburban? Well, that engine's only worth $5,000, but over the life of that car, it's going to get $40,000 or $50,000 in oil. It's the supply line of the energy where the money is and always has been. And so this would change that dynamic forever and for the good. But there are some folks who don't want to go into that change because they have to give up their death grip of power. We just have to let them realize that it's time. And that's what we're doing. Yes, sir.
Dr. Greer, thank you so much for us today. I think it's so important. And for mankind, things like being vegan, practicing yoga, practicing meditation, going to electric vehicles, sustainable living, all of the possibilities that we can do in line with also writing our Congress people or being involved that way. What can we do as individuals to make a change?
Well, there are several things. First of all, you're welcome to come on these expeditions where we do the training to be able to be primary ambassadors to these civilizations. And in the process, you become really enlightened in this state of consciousness, which empowers everything you're doing. The second thing you can do is to pray for us and say some prayers and meditation. I know that my life is so much in the balance and I'm on so much borrowed time. I know this more than anybody. And so I think that's really important. We ask for your prayers and support. The other thing is to ask yourself, what is your skill set? I say this very genuinely. It's become a joke. I'm a country doctor from Virginia, but I really am. We need people who understand finance, who can put together some vehicle for getting a modest amount of funding in place to put all these engineers and scientists who are brave enough to step forward with us as a strategic leadership team to get this stuff out. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to raise money. If I did, we'd have it. We don't have it. I'm not competent to do that. We need help with that. We need people who are good engineers who will work with us in these projects. We desperately need someone, practically speaking, who's very good and really on a world-class level with PR. Because like Fox News wanted to have me on, and we didn't find out in time, and I was in the air when they wanted me on to talk about what happened over O'Hare with the UFO that hovered and went up through the clouds and made a hole in the clouds. So we need sort of the point person for that and can really work. We have all these practical needs, and we really do. It's a lot. And you know, don't let all this fool you. This has all been done. We don't have an office. We don't have a staff. There's no paid staff. There's no budget. And people can't believe what we've done on nothing. Nothing. There's one woman who's a fellow ER doc of modest means who's, you know, contributed $400,000 of our earnings to help us get this far, and a few other people. Very modest over all these years. And you know, so you can help in that way. And there are a lot of other things that you can do. You can help us research and network with folks, because we have, where's Raven? Raven's here. She's our Disclosure Project representative. And we encourage people to become a representative for what we're doing. So you can get these videos of these military witnesses, all this information on your local cable channel, or host a screening of it, or all kinds of things. And you know, most of the things that have happened that have been enormously successful with this project are because people said, you know, I'm going to do it. I'm going to step up to the plate and do it. And so it's something where it's really all about people pulling together. And this is how we've been able to get this far. And the other thing is that you can become a contact person for the ETs in your local area. When we do these trainings, we ask everyone to go back and a local ambassador team, and that they will then train. You know, in medicine there's a saying, you see one, and then you do it, and then you teach it. So see one, do one, teach one. Otherwise they won't let you in medical school. But they shouldn't. Because so in here the idea is that we go out and we share this knowledge and these techniques together, and then ask people. In fact, in Joshua Tree there's a Native American shamanic initiation cave. We go in there 9 at a time, and I lead a meditation where I take everyone, and they are then ambassadors to the universe. That's what we call our training, ambassadors to the universe. Where you then, if you live in, you know, Modesto or wherever you are, you go back there and can train other people and go out and do this in meditation, but also make contact. And people have done this all over the world, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and amazing contacts have happened, amazing. I mean, photograph, videotape, everything. We also need a lot of help with just communications and internet and all that. So there's a lot of needs, you know. The few people really doing all this have a lot on their plate. And you know, a lot of people come up and say, why don't you do, and I say, stop right there. You know, I'm sort of like full up. If you make a suggestion, I'll turn to you and say, that's a great idea, will you do it? It's very much like that. This is a very decentralized sort of situation, which is, I think, how it has to be. That it is, on one level. So, yeah, those are all things that people can do to help. And thank you for asking. Yes, sir.
Specific star system origins, visiting use?
Which star systems are some of these visitors from? Well, they're from all over various star systems and also galaxies. And the exact ones, I don't want to know. I don't ask. Now people have their theories. This one's Palladian, this is Zeta Reticuli, and quack, quack, quack. I don't listen, because you know what I think? I think, A, they don't care. It's like, once you become a world citizen, you don't really care if you're from Poughkeepsie or LA. Number two, it's a security problem. Because in these classified projects, they've developed longitudinal systems that are very dangerous and that could reach other worlds. And they've tried using them. What they've mainly been using them for is that they have platforms in space. I mean, this thing is, you know, people saying, let's start a movement to stop the weaponization of space. I say, you missed that boat in 1965. By 1965, those weapons were up and running. Absolutely true. I know guys who built them. I know guys who've been present when they've been used. But the really advanced ones, I mean, some of them use in electromagnetic pulse generation, but the really advanced ones are longitudinal weapon systems, which, you know, if you think of an electromagnetic signal being like this is a straight line. This is not like this. And so it's at infinite velocity. And so the reason I'm going into all that, a little arcane technology and classified information that they don't let me talk about, is that's why when we have our encounters, and I never say what planet and which star system, First of all, it doesn't matter. Secondly, I don't want to know. And thirdly, I don't think they'd say. So the people who do think they know, I think they don't know. Yes, sir.
Yeah, as long as we're through the looking glass, is time travel part of our reality, and do we have a bunch of white hats busy chasing after, preventing the black hats from messing with our past?
Do we have a bunch of white hats? Is time travel possible? Yes. Can you affect the through that nominally? Nominally. You can't change it fundamentally. How many people know this term Akashic record? Okay. It's sort of used in mythology and mystical, but it actually exists. Now, my military advisor was read into, which is military talk for being briefed on a compartmented, top secret SCI compartmented project, 1974, and this was a pre-existing system where they were able to place and extract from the white noise of the space anything that had ever happened there, yesterday, a year ago, 20 years ago, 1 million years ago, 1 billion years ago, 5 billion years ago. Absolutely true, and this is a technological system. Highly classified, obviously. I can't hear you, honey.
Is that something like a pulsar?
Like a pulsar, no, it's quite beyond that. It's an electromagnetic sensing system. But the point is that you can do this in your consciousness as well. So the Akashic record, or the record of things that have happened, is a pretty fixed thing. Now, in the future, you can go into the future and see, and we do this in our training. I train people to go into non-local consciousness. We'll do this tomorrow in a big meditation together. Who's going to be there tomorrow? Well, I don't know who's going to be there. But anyway, if you're there, this is what we're going to spend a lot of time doing. Because what we want to be able to do is go into that state of unbounded mind. And then once you get off of the fixity of space and time, because that's the nature of mind, you can see a distant place, which is what remote viewing is, but you can also see a distant time, past or future. Now, your past, in terms of seeing it, and even materializing in that time, you're limited to how much effective change, because it's a very fixed Akashic record. There can be warnings, perhaps. And I know that, how many of you have heard of the Bentwaters RAF landing of an ET craft in England that happened, Ministry of Defense, when I was meeting with Lord Hill Norton, a 5-star admiral. He was quite upset that he had been lied to about all this. You know, I've been this cosmic handholder. Can you imagine going to the Pentagon and meeting with the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he was lied to about what's going on in these classified projects? These are not happy campers. They're not mad at me, but they're mad at the situation. But that RAF Bentwaters Rendlesham Forest event was a black, and by the way, we had this craft visit us recently. It was a pyramid, black, onyx shining, and these beings came out of it, and there was actually us, as we had evolved as ETs from about 500,000 years in the future at the end of this cycle. And they were trying to warn about the use of these nuclear weapons and going to DEFCON 5, which is launch, which unfortunately we're on the brink of in the Middle East with Iran. We're very close to DEFCON 5. Not to frighten anyone, but I just got a heads-up call from my European intel folks this week, and they said, oh, God, we're like right there. But I don't know if that answers your question fully, but as briefly as I could. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Utopia occurs here on planet Earth that you talk about.
Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
The utopia that you talk about with the technology that we will inherit. How do you relate that to somebody who's like a child of the Amazons? You know, like what's utopia to them versus what's utopia to us in this technological process?
Well, a good place to start is seaspower.com, our website, seaspower.com. We have a lot of scientific papers and descriptions of what we're working on. I want to know, how do you relate this information with these technologies to the average person who's like, you know, a child out of the Amazon? And that includes, you know, MIT professors and people like that. I mean, the more they know, the less they know. You know, and this is difficult, and it is. It's it's sad because you have so many people who have spent their whole lives what they thought were the apex of their career, only to find that they had known too much. So you have to do this compassionately and with a certain And you know, there's a wonderful saying from the Sufi tradition: the wise are they who speak not, unless they have a hearer, someone hearing. So you have to introduce the information at the level of consciousness of where folks are, and then move it along there. I've gone into a lot of deep information here because all of you are so enlightened. But you know, you really can't go to, you know, the chairman of physics at Caltech and go into too much of this without bringing them along. And it takes patience. It really takes patience, but it's very important. So I'm being told we need to wrap this up. I hope I'll see you all tomorrow. Oh, I thought you told me I had to end it. Oh, 5 minutes. Oh, I see. See, the keeper of the time also gets the question, and she's so clever. And you go, girl. Okay, it's your turn. Say again? This HARP program. Yeah, there's an over-the-horizon sort of high-tech scalar wave, longitudinal wave system up in Alaska and other places. It has to do with affecting, more than anything, mind control. And you know, you have to get into the whole understanding of what the radionic psychotronic capabilities are. And I met with a man in 1950 who, in 1956, developed the system that was adopted by Alphametric Corporation. It was a front company for the CIA that had already developed in the late 50s a technology so that they could hook their spies up to an electronic system so that they could remotely see and influence other places. And people think, oh, this sounds like science fiction, but it's not. And it's very, very real. And that's why the other key part of what we're doing to succeed in all this transition to this new world is that we have to go into a state of consciousness that transcends even that. It has to go into a state of consciousness where you are beyond the influence of anything but the guidance from the divine mind shining within each of us. And all of us have that, and all of us have to explore how it manifests in our lives and then stay centered there every day in the work that we're doing. We're going to do a little book signing out front, and we can talk more then until we need to leave the room. But thank you very much for your attention and support. They're here, outside. Yeah, I'll do a book signing outside the room here just now, so for those who want me to.